The harsh fluorescent lights of the bank lobby flickered overhead as Jonah Calloway's fingers trembled over the keypad. His heart raced, each beat pounding against a chest that had grown weary from years of relentless struggle. He had walked the same streets for decades, the worn soles of his shoes tracing the same cracked sidewalks that had witnessed every failure, every rejection, every sleepless night. Today, however, he had walked through the glass doors with a purpose heavier than the weight of his own despair. He just wanted to check his balance. That was all. Nothing fancy. No dreams of lottery luck, no fantasies about wealth. Just a simple number, the truth staring him in the face, so he could plan for the next week, the next day, the next meal. If you believe in kindness and second chances, please pause for a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Spark. Jonah was no stranger to poverty. He had once been a skilled carpenter, a craftsman with hands that could coax beauty from rough wood. But life had a cruel way of eroding talent when survival was at stake. A sudden layoff, mounting medical bills for his mother, a fire that had gutted his small workshop, all of it had chipped away at his sense of security until he was left hollow, wandering through life with an empty wallet and a heavier heart. His once bright, sparkling eyes were now dulled by disappointment, yet they still flickered with a fragile hope. Today his hope was small, fragile, and terrified. The lobby was nearly empty, save for a few well-dressed clients who glanced at him with polite indifference. And then there was the man at the counter, a millionaire by the way he carried himself, with expensive cufflinks glinting under the artificial light, a tailored suit that whispered success, and a smirk that seemed to suggest the world was his playground. Jonah felt invisible, a mere shadow in a palace of wealth. He approached the nearest ATM, feeling the gaze of the banker burn into his back. Fingers shaking, he inserted his worn debit card and typed in his PIN. And then the screen blinked back at him, not with the usual agonizingly low numbers he had come to expect, but with a sum that made his stomach drop, his knees threatened to buckle, and his chest swell with disbelief. The millionaire, who had been watching Jonah with an amused, slightly condescending smile, suddenly leaned in closer. His laughter froze midway, his perfectly sculpted expression faltering as he caught a glimpse of the screen. Jonah could see the confusion, and then the incredulous shock in the man's eyes. He didn't understand. How could someone like Jonah have a balance like that? It wasn't wealth in the traditional sense. Jonah wasn't suddenly rich, but the number represented months of small victories, careful planning, and the tiny miracles that sometimes visit those who refuse to give up. The money on that screen was the product of relentless effort, the result of every spare hour spent doing odd jobs, repairing furniture, and never giving up even when the world whispered that he should. Jonah could feel the millionaire's stare, heavy and curious. The man had no idea that this balance was more than a number. It was dignity, it was survival, it was the culmination of heartbreak and hope stitched together with unbreakable determination. Jonah's throat tightened as he realized in that moment that his life, though marked by struggle, held a richness that could not be measured by gold or possession. The millionaire finally spoke, his voice tight, almost begrudging. How did you do this? Jonah swallowed hard, unsure if he wanted to answer, unsure if he wanted anyone to see the raw edges of his journey. But something in the man's curiosity, or maybe in his own exhausted honesty, compelled him to speak. By never giving up, he murmured. By taking what little I had and making it enough. One day at a time, one mistake at a time, one hope at a time. The man blinked, as if this simple answer was some exotic treasure he had never encountered before. Jonah felt a strange satisfaction, not from wealth, not from admiration, but from the recognition that came from someone who didn't know him, someone who had only seen the surface. For Jonah, life had never been about impressing others. It had been about survival, about proving to himself that he could endure, that he could claw his way out of despair, that he could still stand when the world tried to break him. And here, in this sterile bank, that struggle was visible to someone who had always taken life for granted. Jonah stepped back, feeling the weight of the world briefly lift. And in that moment, the millionaire, who had laughed moments ago at what he assumed would be a trivial number, offered something unexpected, a nod of genuine respect. It wasn't condescending anymore. It wasn't amusement. It was acknowledgement. Jonah's story was far from over, of course. There were bills to pay. There were responsibilities that gnawed at him like persistent wolves. There were dreams deferred and promises he had yet to keep. But for the first time in a long while, he felt seen. And that recognition was more valuable than anything money could buy. As he left the bank, The sunlight of the early afternoon spilled across the city street, casting long, warm shadows that seemed to stretch in solidarity with him. He took a deep breath, savoring the ordinary beauty of the day, the chatter of children playing in the park, the smell of fresh bread from the corner bakery, the faint hum of life continuing relentlessly. And he realized something profound. Life was measured not by the zeros in a bank account, but by the courage it took to persist, to face despair, and yet choose hope anyway. Jonah's next steps were not easy. He returned to his small apartment, a space cluttered with memories of better days and the tools of his trade. The furniture he had repaired with care was stacked neatly against the walls, each piece a testament to his perseverance. He sat down at his modest wooden desk and began plotting a path forward that honored the struggles he had endured. He would continue taking small jobs, yes, but he would also pursue his passion, restoring old furniture to their former glory. He had learned, painfully, that dignity is not handed out. It is earned, painstakingly, one effort at a time. Days passed, each blending into the next, until Jonah found himself facing a situation he had dreaded. A major repair job for a local restaurant that could make or break his fragile finances. The furniture was antique, irreplaceable, and the client's expectations were impossibly high. Jonah could feel the old fear creeping in, that gnawing sensation that he wasn't enough, that he would fail, as he had so many times before. But he remembered the bank, remembered the moment when someone had recognized the value of perseverance, and with that memory, he began work, hands steady, heart determined. Weeks later, the restaurant opened with its restored tables and chairs gleaming under the morning sun. Jonah stood quietly in the corner as the owner inspected each piece, nodding in delight. There was no applause, no fanfare, just the quiet satisfaction of work done well, of effort recognized. And in that silence, Jonah felt something shift, a gentle confirmation that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. But the real miracle came unexpectedly. A patron at the restaurant noticed Jonah, asked about the craftsmanship, and became an unexpected advocate, sharing his story with friends, spreading the word about the man who had refused to surrender to hardship. Suddenly, Jonah's world expanded, small victories compounding into a slow but undeniable momentum. The balance in his bank account, modest though it was, began to grow, not because fortune had smiled on him, but because his dedication had drawn the attention and support of others who believed in honest effort and integrity. Jonah never forgot the millionaire either. He had learned that day that respect is not reserved for wealth alone. It is earned through resilience, honesty, and the courage to keep moving forward even when the world seems determined to stop you. The man had laughed, yes, but then he had learned a truth too many of us overlook, that richness is found in character, not currency. Months later, Jonah stood on a small stage at a local community center, sharing his journey with a room full of aspiring artisans and young dreamers. His voice wavered at first, but then strengthened, carrying the weight of experience, the fire of someone who had seen the darkest corners of despair and emerged intact. The audience was silent, captivated, until finally they erupted in applause. Jonah's eyes filled with tears, not for himself, but for every person who had ever felt invisible, overlooked, or undervalued. And in that moment he realized that the balance on that bank screen had been more than numbers. It had been a symbol of his refusal to quit, a quiet victory over the cruel indifference of life. And as he stepped down from the stage, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that even the smallest acts of perseverance could ripple outward, touching lives in ways he had never imagined. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, and share it, and don't forget to subscribe to Kindness Spark, because stories like these remind us all that hope, courage, and kindness can change the world one life at a time. Before we close, take a moment to remember someone who has quietly fought through hardships in your own life. Send them a message of encouragement, a small act of kindness, or simply a word of acknowledgement. Sometimes that recognition is worth more than any fortune. Jonah walked home that afternoon, the sun warm on his face, a gentle breeze tugging at his sleeves. He thought about the struggles yet to come, the obstacles he would inevitably face, and the setbacks that would try to pull him back into despair. But he also thought about the balance he had earned, the recognition he had received, and the lives he might touch with his story. And for the first time in a long while, he smiled, not a fleeting, uncertain smile, but a deep, enduring one, rooted in the knowledge that no matter how small his steps, they carried the power to move mountains. Because Jonah had learned the ultimate truth. The richest people are not those who hoard wealth, but those who refuse to let hardship steal their spirit, who fight for their dignity, and who, in doing so, illuminate a path for others to follow.